Yeah. Good evening. Good to see everybody this evening. We'll make a few announcements. Dylan's our song leader tonight. Kevin Yeager has our opening prayer. Kevin Winkler, the closing prayer. And I believe Jeff Bender's back there on the computer tonight. Talked to George after his appointment with his regular doctor on Monday. Not really a whole lot had changed at that point. He was able to do some therapy this week. He said he is definitely weaker, but trying to get the strength back. Had an appointment today with the cardiologist. Haven't heard back from that yet. He was going to let me know. I texted him just a few minutes ago, so maybe that'll remind him and we'll get an update. He may or may not know anymore after seeing the cardiologist, but keep him in your prayers as he continues to deal with this. I think AFib seems to be a big part of the problem. At least it seems to be triggering the problem, so we pray that they can do something to help him with that. Terry Williams, Dwight Williams' wife, and of course, as was announced, Mike Moore's sister, they were able to do that surgery. I believe that was Sunday. They were very concerned because her vitals were not as steady as they needed them to be for surgery, but yet she was struggling with the infection so bad that they had to do the surgery. So they went in and removed screws, pins, that kind of thing, I think from that original ankle surgery that probably was the source of this infection, which had ended up becoming much, much worse and was very life-threatening as it was in her blood. They were able to remove that. She seemed to get through that okay. I think today they went back in and was able to flush out and continue to look for infection and do those kinds of things. Have not heard really much more since then. I think a lot of this, you know how it is dealing with infection, just waiting for medications to win the battle and also recovery time. So keep her in your prayers though. She's been very, very seriously ill and we need to be praying about that. When these kinds of things happen, which they happen often, I'm always reminded of when I was in those situations with my family members and you find yourself kind of away from home at a larger hospital by yourself and you have a lot of time to think and you certainly are counting on the prayers of the people that you love. So definitely remember her. Again, that's Dwight Williams' wife. He's the preacher over at Proctor. And again, Mike Moore's sister. And so keep all of them in your prayers. Jeff Williamson waiting for surgery the 27th of March. He'll have his pre-op, Lord willing, on the 27th of February. Want to remember them. It's good to see Dave's back with us tonight. He was struggling a little bit with his legs and things on Sunday. Glad that he's doing better. Kathy had her test and everything seems to be okay. She does, is dealing with the colitis and those kinds of things, and it does seem to be a pretty severe case, but overall doing well and recovered from that already and still eating well. We're grateful for that. Keep her in your prayers in the coming weeks as they look at the best way to help her. I'm just looking over everything here. I don't think there's anything else. Roger, you had your shots in your back. Did they tell you anything, or are we just waiting to see how they work? Just wait and see. So Roger's had some shots. We pray that they'll be effective as well. There may be some other things that I've forgotten. I had notes kind of scribbled here and there, but we'll get an opportunity to close to make any further announcements. We'll turn it over at this time to Dylan.
Good evening, everybody. How we doing tonight? We're going to sing our first song tonight is number 345, It Is Well With My Soul. When I was picking up my songs for tonight, I came across this song and I decided to sing it, and as I was looking at it, I was reminded of the story behind this song. Some of you probably know this, some of you probably don't, but the story behind this song is just pretty sad, but it's pretty incredible too. The man who wrote this song, his name was Horatio Spafford, and he was a lawyer, a very successful one at that. And at some point in his life, himself, his wife, his family, he had several daughters, four daughters. They decided to take a trip to England, and he was delayed. They had a slight change of plan there. He was delayed on business concerns. He sent his wife and his children ahead of him over to England on the ship. Um, and while they were crossing the Atlantic Ocean, the ship sank after it collided with another vessel, and his four daughters died in the incident. His wife survived, and his wife made it safely to the destination and sent a telegram back to him with the words "saved alone." And so I was just reminded of that story. It's tragic. Um, and so the story continues. The man, boarded his ship on his way to meet his grieving wife, the story goes, and he wrote this song as he passed over the spot where the ship sank, and so it kind of reminds me, what an incredible example of faith, and, I think about my life and I think, I don't really have a whole lot to be that upset about, I mean, we've all gone through tough times and I've gone through tough times, but when I put life in perspective, I never really had to go through something quite that bad. So my worst days don't really seem too bad. But I think the point is that even if I did have days this bad in my life or worse, the point is that the man had incredible faith, because there's something better to look forward to, because Jesus has control and we have the hope of something better. So I just wanted to share that because I thought that was kind of encouraging to me. So. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, what is my love that taught me to stay? It's why, it's why my soul says it should bow, though trial should come. Let this blessed assurance control that Christ hath regard my blessed state, and hath shed his own blood for my soul. Is with my soul. It is what it is what my soul. I'm sick of the bliss of this glorious thought. My sin not in vain, but the whole is nailed to this cross, and no praise the soul. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well. My soul. And face the day when the veil shall be sung, the lights be rolled back as the scroll, the trump shall resound, and shall descend. Even so, it is what so my soul. It is well. It is well. My soul. Next song is number 500. The fount of every blessing. Oh, the fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy praise. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me now to adore thee, may I still thy goodness prove, while the hope of endless moon fills my heart with joy and love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I've come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive home. Jesus saw me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to rescue me from danger interposed his precious blood. Oh, to grace the great and death, daily I come strain to be. Let thy goodness like a thread bind my wandering heart to thee. Never wander from thee, never leave the God I love. Here's my heart, take and see, seal it for thy courts above. The next song is number 587, but first, if you would, please stand. We'll be led in an opening prayer by Brother Kevin Yeager. Sing them over again to me, wonderful words of life. Let me more of their beauty see, wonderful words of life. Words of life and beauty, teach me faith and duty, beautiful words. Wonderful words of life, beautiful words, wonderful words of life. Christ gives to all wonderful words of life. Sinner, list to the loving call, wonderful words of life. Also freely given, moving us to heaven. Beautiful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words of life. Sweetly echoes the gospel call, wonderful words of life. Offer pardon and peace to all, wonderful words of life. Jesus, only Savior, sanctify us forever. Beautiful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words of life. You may be seated. Kiddos, time for classes. And big kiddos, too.
Richard and Linda brought something interesting tonight. I think many of you have already seen this, but I just wanted to share it with you for a moment. This is a hymn book that's in Korean. And if you look at that, it's just interesting to see. I can't really even tell enough about it at this point at a glance to know for sure, like sort out which song is which. However, there are some indicators. It's written in English underneath, so if you look at it closely, you could probably figure that out. But it's just very interesting to see that. And then he's also got a copy of the scriptures of the Bible here as well. And he was looking at that, showing it to Bobby up there. He leaned back and told me, he said, I expect you to preach out of that. And so I just thought I'd do it tonight. I'll just go ahead and do that for you this evening. But it does have the English translation on the other side. But you think about the gospel, and you think about the power of that book. And that alone, it's not the only reason that we should believe, but that is a believing factor. You think about all the books that have been written, all of the stories that have been told, and yet this book still remains to be the #1 seller. By the way, don't be confused by that. A lot of people say, well, yeah, it got such a head start. No, it's the #1 seller every year. If you start over in January 2025 and you calculate no matter who writes what, it will be the #1 seller in all of the world. Translated, and I've looked that up in the past when I was preaching sermons and teaching lessons on the Word of God, how many translations we know of, different languages that it's in. But it's just an amazing, amazing book. And, if it were consisting of a bunch of fables by individuals that didn't matter or didn't count, it would have died a long time ago. No book rivals it and people's desire to at least have it. I wish there was more desire to study it and to understand it. We're glad you're here tonight. We're going to look in the book of Job as we've been doing, working our way through the big picture of the Bible, and this is certainly a big part of the big picture, what goes on with Job. It's a part of the story that we often struggle with in our world today. We think about, why is it that people suffer? What is God doing? How involved is he? Is he hearing us? Job asked some of those questions, and we're going to look at some of that tonight. You know, he says at one point, even if I could talk to God, I would probably doubt, in a sense, he's saying, that he was listening to me because of this suffering. And have you ever been in that position? You're talking to someone, maybe you're angry, maybe you're having some kind of a debate, and you think, you're not listening to me. You're not making any change, so therefore you can't be listening to me. Well, just because they're not changing doesn't mean they're not listening. Maybe they disagree, or maybe there's a reason why they're not doing what you want them to do. And so Job goes through all of this, and yet the Bible tells us that he didn't sin in all of it. And sometimes as I'm reading, I think, I can't believe God didn't count that as a sin. Because there's times when he questions God. There's times when he says, God, this is what you're doing to me. And yet God understood where he was coming from and what he was going through. And so it's a great story for us to look at and think about and be challenged by. We're not going to necessarily review every time we come together. We know the story of Job, but just as a quick reminder, Job is a man that God is having a conversation with Satan, and he says, have you considered this man? This is a man who's faithful and just and blameless. There's no one like him on all of the earth. And Satan says, well, of course he would be that way. You won't allow anything different. You've got this fence built around him, this hedge. I can't get to him. I couldn't cause him to sin, no matter how hard I tried, because of your protection. And God says, oh no, I'll allow you to take away some of these blessings that I've given Job, and you'll see that he still will stand. And so that takes place, and the devil goes after Job, and he takes away all of his possessions, which we read and looked at in those days, and they're still that way today, by the way. But in those days, land and animals and those kinds of things really accounted for his possessions, and God allowed Satan to take all of that away. And then we find that his family, you might say, oh boy, taking everything I own away from me really hurts, and it would. We keep mentioning Cody and Noel. They lost their home and all of their possessions, and it hurts. And every day when they wake up, they're reminded of that, and it hurts again. But believe me, I can't tell you how many times they've said, but we're so thankful that our children are safe, that our children weren't playing down there in that basement where that lightning struck and that gas line blew open and it went through the basement of that house. It would have absolutely not been a good thing with those young children. Luckily, they weren't there. But in this case, Satan was allowed to touch the children and his wife. He finds himself looking around with nothing in his mind left. But yet, Satan wasn't done. There's a lesson for us right there. You would think when we're down that Satan would quit kicking us, but no, he says, God, yeah, he didn't curse you and die, but you didn't let me touch him. If I would touch him, surely he would curse you and die. And so God says, well, okay, I will let you can't have his life, but I'll let you afflict him in that way. And so we see these boils, and we see where he's sitting there and he's scraping those boils, and he tears his clothes, but yet he worships, remember? And he never gives up on God. God, why is this happening? That's a valid question. But God, am I doubting your ability? Am I doubting your power? Am I doubting your reasoning? No. I've got a lot of things in this life that I question. I've talked to Mike about it. We'll be talking, he'll be eating lunch or dinner, and we'll be talking, and I'll say, I just wouldn't, in a million years, I wouldn't believe that God wouldn't punish this more severely. But if he chooses not to, he's supreme and sovereign, and I'm just his creation. If he chooses not to, he's still God. He's still just. He's still fair. He's still the amazing, amazing God that he always has been and always will be. And so I have to remind myself on a daily basis that no matter what he decides, he's still God. And my understanding of that and my opinion of that really doesn't matter. I think that's when we really quickly fall into sin, is when we begin to think we know better than God. And that may happen sometimes when we don't even recognize it. Tonight we're going to look toward these three men who came. You think, here's Job, he's going through all of this. He's in such bad shape that when these three men show up, who are friends of his supposedly, that at first they don't even recognize him. And as they approach him, there's silence for a while. As a matter of fact, for days. I don't believe that these men were evil men in the sense that we would think today. I don't think their purpose in coming was to rub salt in the wounds. I don't think their purpose in coming was to try to separate God from Job. as I read this and look at this, I'm not saying they were perfect in every way, but I think these men actually came in the beginning and they were hurt for Job and they felt for him. And the fact that the way that they responded in the beginning, now, as the conversation goes, we see them falling apart a little bit more. Maybe they should have been quiet the whole time. But the point that I'm making is, I think that they started out, at least, in their mind, they're thinking, boy, Job, you must have done something wrong here. And so they're trying to help him to recognize the need for repentance and turning back to God, and you'll hear those very kinds of things said. That's not necessarily bad advice, is it? But Job keeps saying, wait a minute, though. You can't repent for something that you didn't do wrong. Somebody's got to tell me. I just love to have this conversation with my God so that he could condemn me so I'd know where I need to turn. And so it's a struggle. And it's a very interesting story. And so we turn here to this section where his friends show up. We get to, I believe it's chapter 2 is where we are, and we get to verse 11 beginning. It tells us that the friends show up. They had heard of all the adversity, and we already talked about some of that. They didn't even recognize him, but it says they wept. They see this, and it says each one tore his robe and sprinkled dust toward his head, or on his head toward heaven. They sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights. No one spoke a word. They saw that his grief was great. After all that silence, we see Job begin to lament here, and we see a quick summary of that. We'll have a quick summary of that. We get to chapter 3, verse 3. He says, may the day perish on which I was born, and the night in which it was said, a male child is conceived. He's saying, I wish I had never even been born. It'd have been better off if I didn't have to go through this. If I hadn't been born, I wouldn't be enduring this. Verse 11, why did I not die at birth? Why did I not perish when I came from the womb? Verse 13, for now I would have had lain still and been quiet. I would have been asleep. I would have been at rest. By the way, that's something else for us to remember. Sometimes folks will have a baby that's conceived and they're excited they're going to have a little child, and they'll lose that child even before birth a lot of times, and it's devastating. And don't ever let yourself think for a moment that it's anything less than devastating. But one comforting thing that we can find is even Job here, who is very knowledgeable of the way God works, said, had I not made it from conception to birth, he said, I would be at rest. And so we can take comfort in the fact that that little one's at rest and at peace with God, and if we live faithfully, someday we'll be there with that small child. Verse 20 and 21, why is light given to him who is in misery, and life to the bitter soul? He's asking, why am I, if I'm so miserable, it'd be better if I die. Why does God continue to allow me to live? Who long for death, but it doesn't come, and search for it more than hidden treasure. Verse 25, for the thing I greatly feared has come upon me, and I've dreaded that it's happened to me. Verse 26, I have no rest. A couple of quick things to consider. Nowhere does Job say that he will have nothing more to do with God, that God's not fair, that God's not just. He never challenges them in that way at all. He's asking about these questions. He's saying, I wish I had never been born, but he's not saying those kinds of things. We talked last week, and I just want to very quickly mention it again. Zach had pointed it out, verse 23 there, where it says, why is light given to a man whose way is hidden, and whom God has hedged in? He's basically saying, God, by your keeping me alive, you've got me fenced into this situation. I can't escape it. And that's his question. He feels like he's hedged into this misery. He can't understand why God's allowing that to happen, but he knows that it's God's power that keeps him from dying. For some reason, God's got a purpose in all of this, and he won't just let me die and be at peace and be at rest. It's an interesting declaration because Satan said that Job was hedged in back there in chapter 1 and verse 10. I definitely don't think at this point that he knew. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't really say, but I know it's a valid point to bring up, and I think it's interesting that it came to your mind at this point in our conversation, because that's kind of the place I literally have in my notes here, right as I'm talking about what Job is saying. He's kind of saying, we get down to chapter 3, verse 24, and he's basically saying, I'm so miserable I can't even eat. You put food in front of me and I sigh. You ever been in that situation? I've seen that happen. Somebody's in the hospital. Most recently, it was Kathy. Kathy's in the hospital. She's struggling to eat. It was hard to see. And you go in and visit a little bit, and here they come, and they put that tray down, and she goes, here we go again. I can't eat this. No, you got to eat something. And we start lecturing them, don't we? Until it's us. And then we go, I can't eat. That's what Job's saying. And I think it's interesting that Bill brings that up at that point, because there's no quiet, there's no rest, there's no ease, trouble's there. He's miserable, but at this point he doesn't know why. He's even asking God why. It's obvious, had he known about the conversation, he might say, okay, I can do this. God put his trust and confidence in me. He's told Satan I can endure this and I'm going to do it. But see, he doesn't know. So he's saying, why? Why are you allowing this to happen? What comes to your mind in your life? I'm not saying you have to publicly answer that, but I'll bet you've had times when you said, God, why are you allowing this to happen? I don't see the good in it. I don't see the purpose. I don't see the end goal. I don't see the big picture. But his understanding's far above and beyond our understanding. And so like Job, we may question it, but we never question God. And I think that's important. Oh, I think, yeah. I think you're right, Bill. I think the Bible indicates at the beginning when God's saying, here's a just and right man, there's no man like him on the earth. I mean, that's a sign of respect. You don't say that about someone that you don't think is worthy. I really, especially if you're God. So I agree with you. I think he had a great deal of respect for Job's service and his commitment to God. He reminds Job, and sometimes we need reminders of who God is, don't we? Sometimes that comes in a different way. Job was actually able to have this conversation with God, and God said, who is this who, darkens my counsel? Can you stop the waves from coming up on the shore? Do you set the stars and the moon and the sun? What's God say to us sometimes? He doesn't speak directly to us, but you remember back in, 2001? I remember it well. I'd saved up my money. I was 31 years old. And I had saved my money for years. I was mowing Bartley and Darlene's grass when I was 12 and picking up apples and mowing that grass. And guess where that money went? It went in my business account. I was going to start my own business. And then I'm down, I'm working at Sonny's gas station, $3.25 an hour. Guess where that money went? In my business account. And I was shoveling snow, and I was detailing Gene Fry's car, and everybody that would let me clean their car, and I would charge them, and I'd put that money in my business account. And years and years and years of doing that and saving so that I could start that business. And then I started it. And by the way, with a lot of help, bought that building over there. I didn't have the money to buy it. And the guy said, he said, the roof's bad. He said, I'm giving you a deal because you need a roof before winter. Well, we closed on October 31st. It was going to be hard to get a roof on. We got one warm day, and I had to go to work. And Dad and Les Weiss and Gilbert Netting put a roof on that. Painted the roof on that. They didn't put it on until the next summer, but they painted it to try to get me through the winter. That's what it means to be a part of the church. There were a lot of people, and God was using his people to help. I believe that with all of my heart.